All right. Welcome, everybody, to our first episode of Relationships Today, the podcast. And I have my good friend, Mairka Soleil. I like to think of her as a friend with a funny name because she's Polish, but she has a French last name. What's up with that?
It's
What's
called getting divorced.
mm,
Sorry.
That's perfect. Jump right into
Hey, we're
it.
talking about relationships, right? So we got to keep
Yes.
it real.
We are definitely. Asked Marika to come on because she actually is a huge part of why I'm actually pushing this podcast out finally. The podcast is called Relationships Today, and friendships are super important. And having those friends that kind of like maybe help light the fire a little bit or push us in that way. So I wanted to say thank you to you for just being like, let's go, get up and level up, Kevin.
Oh, you know what? I'm really honored to be here today. I wasn't expecting to be the first person on your show, and I've been kind of when we met, we talked a little bit about what you wanted to do, and I was kind of in the same boat, and I kind of did that leap, and I thought, let's push Kevin to do this because he wants to, and he just needs someone to, poke him a little bit and get him
Yeah.
going and give him, some tips. So, no, I'm
Yeah.
happy to be here. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate the push and your willingness to come on. So you are an entrepreneur and a mom and divorced, but in a new relationship,
Mhm.
right? So you have lots of relationships that you could talk about.
I do.
We're not going to get into all of them. And one thing, the title of this podcast is Relationships Today. So I really like to focus on the present and maybe the future, even like where we're going, as opposed to digging into people's past. But if I had to ask you a first tough question for the podcast sake for the listeners, um, if there's anything that you could say you learned from your divorce, what would it be? That might be something you need to think about for a minute, so we could come back to it if you want.
Yeah. I think, I don't know necessarily if my relationship was maybe rushed into. I think I was young when it started. And I think the number one thing I would have changed is to be more ready, and be more, um, get to know the person a little bit more and see if we fit. Because it all happened pretty quickly. Kids came pretty quickly. And if I, maybe did some extra work with that person, and if they were, wanting to maybe explore some kind of, I know I talk about marriage counseling sometimes. I know um, it's not what most people think about, but not necessarily a marriage counseling, but really getting down to the basics of your values. In terms of family, money is huge. It's very important to talk about money, knowing kind of their financial situation, especially if you're in, our age, like in your 30s or 40s, and you've built a career or starting to build a career or want to, kind of knowing where that's going to go, if there's any, debt issues or money management. I think that's important. And then, living together and knowing kind of if you can still accept that person. So I think just being more ready from the beginning is, the thing. And I know that could take time, and I think people just really know if they, want to get married or they don't, or maybe they don't have to. But if you connect and you both have those same wants and values, then it should work. But if you don't, and if there's something there that's, not meshing, then take a step back, reevaluate, kind of thing. So just preparedness, like, it's a big deal. It's not just, oh, we're going to get married. There's more to it. And I think people don't realize that there's so much more to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so being more ready. Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's
And I mean,
good.
that could take, who knows that what that is for anybody. It could be different for everybody. Right. Um,
Yes, I actually spent about a decade working with couples who were preparing for
mhm.
marriage and helping them prepare for that. So I got to see a lot of interesting dynamics and all the things that come into play. So you raised a lot of important points there. I don't, like I said, I don't want to dig into your past too much, or like why the marriage broke down or anything like that. Just want to, at least for now, focus on, you know, the things that you're taking forward with you, right? And because you are in a new relationship now, you told me. And so I guess that whole experience helped you to be more prepared for this one, probably.
For sure.
And, you know, which is
Definitely.
unfortunate in a way that we have.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to go through the ending of a relationship to be ready
No,
for it.
and it's really hard. You know, it's been almost 3 years and it's still really hard, but it takes a long time to get over something like that because it's a big, you know, break in your life that you have to pretty much start over, and then letting somebody else into your life is a big deal. But I truly believe that, you know, when you find that person, there's just a special connection and you just know that you guys just get along. Like, I think getting along is so important. Um,
Okay, well, you just touched on a couple of topics that I'm going to save for another podcast. One being chemistry versus compatibility.
mhm.
The other one, there's the whole discussion around soulmates, and I don't want to get into those today because those are huge topics. And actually, they're going to be addressed in my second book. As you know, you read my first book.
I have read your first book. It was awesome.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Chocolate Covered Frenchfries, right? A recipe for any relationship. So for people who haven't heard about it yet or whatever, you know, there are going to be links in the podcast descriptions, and you can find my information on Instagram, on the internet, on Amazon, on Facebook, whatever. But so thank you for reading it. The second book is going to be on love and spirituality. So I want to address some of those things as well that we were just talking about in that, and with maybe some future guests, or hopefully you'll come back on. But
If
before
you
we
need somebody, I'll come on. But I don't think you'll need any, or you probably won't need me anymore.
well, I always need you, Mairka, clearly, right? So, that being said, with the whole like movement out of your divorce and into another relationship, I wanted to ask you, you have your own podcast. Was that a big motivation for that? And tell us a little bit about the vision for yours and where, like,
The vision for mine has been kind of all over the place. As you know, I have Live Okanagan, Live Group, Live Everything, and that's kind of my brand going forward. It's all about living, you know, your best life, living in Kelowna, which is my real estate business, and it all kind of works with what I'm trying to do. My podcast is called I Live, and it was supposed to be, well, it still is. It's more of a bridge between my life and my crazy work schedules, my, you know, all my projects I'm doing, family life, all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, it's kind of inspirational because I've only done a few episodes, but the goal is to kind of talk about things that I've gone through, you know, relating to personal stuff and business stuff. And it's just all about how I live and making the best of situations, growing, a lot of personal development, because that's kind of on the kick that I've been on, and just being able to share it with people. And I think, you know, for me, being able to share with people, help people, if I can help you in any way with an experience that I've had and, you know, something that maybe I've overcome, you know, I want to do it. So it's just another outlet for me to share. And at the same time, it's a personal development thing for me. So being able to, you know, talk for half an hour, or be on an interview like this, like it's all personal development, it's all growth. And I think anything that we do along those terms is important. So yeah, I started the podcast to do that. And of course it's challenging too, because it takes time and you want to, you know, have good topics. And I think time is the biggest factor, but at least I'll be able to use this one for my podcast too. So
yeah, well, good for you for,
hmm.
you know, for doing that. Like obviously, I know how hard it is to get going, to do something of your own, which has to do with your relationship with yourself, right? You know, like when I wrote my book and, you know, that I went through that whole like doubt about, do I really have enough to offer that I would publish a book? And I think some of that happens when we create anything like a podcast or whatever. Will people actually listen to what you have to say? right?
You'd be surprised. Like a lot of people, I think, are always looking for experiences by others. I think
Mhm.
it's a really good way. Like relatability is huge, and you have a lot to offer, because of the relationships you've been in and what your passions are. So, good for you for writing the book. Like that's a huge feat. Like that's amazing,
Thank
and
you.
to be able to share that with people, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey for sure. I'll probably tell that story at some point. I don't know, again, why I wrote it and all that. But I mean, the motivation for all of this whole brand around relationships is that all of our life is relationships. I say that all the time, but we don't learn about them in anywhere specific, right? We tend to learn about it through trial and error, through the fire, through sometimes dysfunctional examples in our life, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And then it's usually later on in life when we start doing personal development that we start to read and we start to ask for
Hmm.
help and all that sort of
Hmm.
stuff. And unfortunately, we men are poor, even worse at that typically than women.
Hmm.
So I wanted to ask you in your real estate business, because that's probably your biggest focus, right,
Hmm.
in life. How much of it would you say is relationships?
Oh
That
my gosh. It's all relationships. All of it. It's my clients are, I say this a lot, and it's not about homes. It's about my clients and the feelings that they have, whether it's about a house or whatever, but with me, importantly, because I'm the one that's taking them through all the steps, whether we're buying a house or selling a house, whatever, that initial connection that I have with my clients, that's what makes it a good or bad experience. So if that relationship is not, where we want it to be, if there's no connection or a match, it's almost better to step away and let somebody else do it that connects with them. And through the transaction, things get brought up, and being able to handle and being strong enough in that relationship so that there's a mutual respect, understanding that not everything is my fault. Me understanding that people change their minds, or they
yeah,
want something else, and not getting frustrated. So it's a lot of back and forth, very similar to a boyfriend girlfriend thing. You got to work with each other. It's more of a working relationship, obviously, but
yeah, clear.
um you listen, a lot of listening, communication, which is huge in relationships. So yeah, and the trust factor, knowing that I've got your back, knowing that, there's that mutual respect. And that's really what it comes down to, I think, in all relationships.
And trying to
So,
get them not to go too low on their low ball offers, right?
well, we always have to be realistic,
Yeah,
and I will
that's
teach you that.
yeah. I know there's lots of realtors in our city, and I hear it all the time. Everybody wants to lowball, and I get it, but it's hard
Yeah,
for you
well,
guys. It's a fine
we'll do
line.
whatever you want us to do, but you got to be realistic, right? We don't want to offend anybody and be
Yeah.
out to lunch. Yeah.
So, is the dynamic because if you work with married couples or couples of any sort, or maybe people even who are divorcing who own a home together, do you have to deal with the dynamic between those people often, like the fact like they're disagreeing and whatever,
Oh
like
yeah.
do
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I've learned how to, kind of navigate through all kinds of relationships. So you'll have, the single person who's pretty easy. Then you'll have the single young person who has their family, like their parents who are older,
Mm,
they tie them in. So there's that relationship, which I handle a little bit differently than I do with my client. Then there's the married couple, and it's usually a husband and wife. And one person, likes the house, one person doesn't. So also finding who I will communicate with better. Is it the woman that I'll be communicating with better? Me being a woman, maybe that's the relationship I should foster a little bit more. Who's more, who likes to text more? Because, I'll be texting you at 9 o'clock at night trying to set up appointments for the next morning. Who's available? Is the mom, is the woman a mom? Maybe she's taking care of the kids at night, so it's better to talk to the husband. So being able to read their relationship, and you know at the same time, my end result or my end goal is to make it good for everybody. And we don't want their relationship to suffer because of what's going on. So, you know, you got to be neutral. At the same time, I listen a lot. I listen to a lot of people's emotions and problems and why they're moving. You know, some people have some deep reasons why they have to move, or what they want next. Maybe it's a big dream, you know, they're leveling up their family to, you know, a bigger house. You know, I get to listen to all this. So it's really awesome. Like, I get to hear a lot of stories, and I really get to know people well. You know, it doesn't really matter if what kind of relationship they're in. But I do get both sides, and it's nice. And a lot of my clients become my friends, and we stay in touch, and it's awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
That's great. Oh, that's awesome. I wonder how often you think about these dynamics, you know, like sometimes it takes these sorts of exercises to really reflect on that, right?
Totally. Yeah, you're right.
You're almost like a counselor sometimes, eh?
Hey, there's a few memes going around Instagram, like realtor is just like one small percentage of, you know, realtor, and then the rest is like psychologist, counselor.
Yeah.
An ear to listen.
Yeah.
Yes. everything else. So
Yeah.
jack of all trades.
You brought up some interesting points, you know, like stuff maybe to talk about later too. Like one thing you mentioned was the dynamic between like you, like female, or you and the male or whatever, because I would imagine, you know, and I don't want to get into it now because we don't have time, but you know, you hear stereotypical things like men would naturally gravitate, like that relationship would be easier for you because you're a woman, and you know, or the female thing, like you said, might be a connection because you relate, or sometimes it's more competitive. I've heard that, you know, like women are catty with other women or whatever.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway.
And you don't want to piss anybody off, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe, like, since we're talking about relationships, maybe if it's a, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe their relationship has some issues that deal with, I don't know, not necessarily jealousy, but something.
Right.
Maybe there's something there. And I don't want to cross the line for anyone to think anything, because people think stuff like, oh, you know, she's this and this, maybe why are you talking more to her? Like, just, you know, like simple things like that, which I would never come in between. So, you know, I always just take the professional route, and whatever I'm feeling and whatever connection is there. But to be honest, it's usually the female connection is usually much stronger. And that just seems to work out really well.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, like I said, we have so much we could talk about, you know, your mom, your friend, you know.
Let's just do a show. We'll do the Kevin Mairka show. We have so much to talk about.
I'm down. But so we'll definitely have to probably have you back on.
For sure.
Soon. Before we start to wind it down, though, I wanted you to let people know where they can find you, like what, you know, because you got your own stuff going on. So do you want to tell us where we can find you on the interweb?
Yes. So on my website is liveokanagan.com. And my Instagram business real estate stuff is all at Live Okanagan, LIVV. Don't forget the V, the double V. And yeah, same with, if you search Live Okanagan, you'll be able to find me everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Mairka Soleil.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on. And thank you for pushing me to get this first episode out.
And this is my shirt.
Look at his shirt. Yes. You know,
it says, ask me about real estate. So
yeah, for people who are listening, you can't see it, but there will be some video footage on my Instagram and yours too, hopefully.
For sure. Thank you.
So people who are listening, want to thank you for coming out to the podcast. Want to encourage you to subscribe. The goal is to have weekly episodes like this with people talking about the realities of relationships today and what's happening, all types of relationships, not just romantic ones. I always say that. I think it's really important. And of course, you can find me at Kevin.Kishor, just like it's spelled, sounds, Kishor, on Instagram, Facebook. You can look up Chocolate Covered Frenchfries. You'll find me on the web all over the place, I imagine. Feel free to message me at any time on Instagram or Facebook, or look me up, send me an email. Thank you for listening. Please share with other people if you find value in this podcast. We are just getting started, And hopefully we're going to help maybe change some lives, impact some lives anyways, or at least give people a venue to discuss the things that are real for them that they're not talking about. So thanks again, Mairka.
No problem. Thank
for
you.
coming on. Everybody else, have a great day. Thanks for listening. Bye.